Another week, another loss for UCF, and this one was a tough watch. UCF loses to Cincinnati at Nippert Stadium 20-11, and I have a lot to rant about. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I am your host, Sean Green. As always, we are sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Guys, if you bet the line on FanDuel earlier in the week, UCF was plus 10.5, and what do you know? They covered it. So, again, like I said, they always have the best lines out there. If you want to bet on UCF for the rest of college football season and then NBA, NFL, whatever it is, head to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and a proud sponsor of the Charge On podcast. Now that we got that out of the way, hope you all are doing okay on this Saturday night. I appreciate everybody that joined me for the live watch along once again. It was a lot of fun hanging with you guys, not watching the game. Watching the game was hard to watch. I'm not going to front. When we started this podcast originally, it was just like, I don't think before you start a pod, you don't think, oh, there might be a time where this team is not good. And we've had a lot of that over the last couple of years where UCF just simply is just not as good of a football team. And we knew that coming into the season. So I don't want to, the ranting is not going to be necessarily about that. Before these last couple of games, me and Nick have come on to the pregame podcast and said, listen, you have to understand going into this game, there is a high likelihood that UCF loses this game. The team that they're playing is the better team. They're more talented. And you just want to stay competitive. And we said that about Kansas. We said that about Cincinnati. Kansas State, we thought, hell, UCF should be the better team and go win. That didn't happen. So really the last two games you looked at and said UCF should hopefully kind of just keep the game competitive. We hope they keep it competitive. You don't want to get blown out. I'll be honest, folks. Frankly, especially today's game, I would much rather them get blown out. Because it's way more frustrating to see a team that is on the 2-yard line of being consistent and close than, seeing a team that just gets blown out. Because if you get blown out, at least you're like, okay, that team's 100% better. It is what it is. And you can accept it better. The hard part is looking at the stats of this game. But again, what do we always say? Stats don't tell the full story. And if you just look at stats, it lies to you. Because if you look at stats, this is the perfect, if there was a dictionary for stats lie to you, this would be the definition of what's in that dictionary. Let's go through it. Let's just go through the stats that you see. UCF has 413 yards of total offense, 222 passing yards to 191. Also, the total yards, 413 for UCF, 306 for Cincinnati. Great. Rush yards, 191 for UCF compared to 115 for Cincinnati. 26 first downs compared to 14. 7 of 18 on third down, 2 for 9 on third down for Cincinnati. Ran 90 total plays to Cincy's 48. And then the one right here. Time of possession. UCF had the ball for 39 minutes and 44 seconds. Almost 40 minutes of game. UCF had the ball on offense. Cincy, 20 minutes. And what was the final score? 20-11. UCF in 40 minutes of having the ball on offense, they put up 11 points. Sean, I didn't watch the game. How the hell did that happen? Well, let's go through it. Let me tell you exactly what happened. Cam Fancher was the starting quarterback. And I'm actually not really going to go in on Cam Fancher. I know some people might. Cam Fancher had an okay game. He wasn't great. He wasn't bad. He was okay. Cam had, I think, a much better first half than he did second half. I think Cam's legs are kind of what make him unique and special. He was electric on his when he would run the ball. But frankly, he's the only bit of run game that UCF has. UCF, besides Cam Fancher today, Cam Fancher had 20 carries for 108 yards and a touchdown. Take that out of it. Miles Montgomery had 13 carries for 56 yards. Stacey Gage actually looked good, 6 carries for 24 yards. And Jaden Nixon, 2 carries, 3 yards. That doesn't tell you the full story. Miles Montgomery having the 13 carries for 56 yards. He got some of that at the end of the game there. Again, that shows you they just don't have a run game. And me and Nick have talked to you guys about it for the last couple of weeks and said, listen, if they can't find a run game, it's going to be hard when you get into Big 12 play. And what do you know? It's hard. You're playing a better team in Cincinnati. And we're going to talk a lot of offense here. Because frankly, again, the defense did its job. The defense isn't great. The defense is good. Because there are some drives where the defense gives up too much. They give up touchdowns. There were a couple times like, it should have been, Cincinnati should have scored 27 or at least 24. They had Brennan Swordsby tripped. They were on the 1 yard line. He tripped on third down. That most likely would have been a touchdown. But at the end of the day, they only allowed 20 points, which the only other team to hold Cincinnati to about that much was Nebraska in the first game. Nebraska held Cincy to 17 points. This is the second lowest amount of points that Cincinnati has scored all season. If you would have told me, Sean, Cincinnati's only going to score 20 points, I would have been like, UCF wins the game. But no, they don't. Because, what do you know? They don't have a run game. Well, Sean, they don't have a run game. That shouldn't matter. Yeah, it does. Because what did Cincinnati do that Kansas really didn't do until the second half? Well, what Cincy did was, hey, we're going to rush 3 for a majority of the game, and we're going to drop 8 guys into coverage. So all of those short little intermediate routes and passes that you want to throw, go ahead. Throw them, because we're going to stop them. And you're also not going to get beat us deep, because we're going to have guys in the back end, and you're not really going to get us on play actions, because we know you're not running the football. This is where the issue is kind of stemming from. And I'm getting to the offensive line. Just give me a second. This is called the rant, the Sean rant episode. Teams know UCF doesn't have a run game, which is a complete polar opposite from last season. So teams are not really playing Miles Montgomery. They know that basically UCF will not beat them running the football. They know UCF wants to throw the football. They're good at throwing the football. They can't run it worth anything. So we're just going to play 8 guys into coverage. We'll be able to stop the running backs if they hand it off, but we're not going to let them beat us deep with some chunk plays, which UCF has not proven that they really can do anyway. But with that being said, they know we can't run the football. That's why the offense would go on long periods and long drives. Here was the problem with the offense today. They couldn't run the ball, sure. They were moving the ball through the air, especially in the first half. They were moving the ball. They were moving it. They were going. Then they would get past the 50-yard line. And all of a sudden, what do you know would happen? False start, chop block, hold. It was continuous. The offensive line had its worst game by far today. And I'm not even just talking about in general. The offensive line is the reason that this UCF offense can't get to another gear, can't get to another level. Because you look at Cam Fancher today, and yes, the stats don't really tell the full story. He was 28 of 49 for 222 yards. Not great. Not great at all. But also, it doesn't help you when Cam Fancher is moving the ball. They're moving the ball up the field, and then they get past the 50-yard line. And they get in third and long situations, second and long situations, because of a hold, because of a false start. The offensive line is the sheer reason, is the only reason why this UCF offense will not take that next step. Because if the offensive line was just average, and again, I think at pass blocking, they're pretty good. They're a pretty good pass blocking team. The issue is Cincinnati was barely rushing anybody. They sent everybody into coverage because UCF can't run the football, because the offensive line are not creating enough holes for the running backs to do anything. So then you look at the penalties, because basically I just told you all of the game stats. UCF dominated every single one of them. Well, penalties, 10 penalties for 75 yards. Well, what were those penalties? I actually wish I could figure it out. I want to know what those penalties were, because but most of them were on the offense. It was on the offensive line. It was false start. There was a chop block. There was a couple holdings. A lot of it was, or some of it was delay of game. Like, it was continuous offensive mistakes and offensive problems that caused this game to be this way. That's what's frustrating, because you looked at this game And I'm watching Cincinnati, and I'm saying UCF matches up pretty decent with them. UCF's able to move the ball. The defense is playing pretty well, but the game is 20-11. And really, that's a not true score. It should be 20-3. They scored at the end of the game. They scored a 2-point conversion. Whoop-de-doo. Now, I get it. We came into the season saying it's year zero, it's a rebuild, blah, blah, blah. And I get that. The frustration is mounting, though. Because the frustration is, I understand if this team is just not as good as the other teams. I understand Cincy should be better than you. They were better than you. You, though, came in today, and you looked like you can compete. And they did. The problem is, offensively, it looked like Cincinnati was playing a FBS or FCS school. Like, legitimately. Legitimately. The offense would move the ball. They'd get past the 50-yard line. They would do something stupid. And then they'd either have to punt or have to go for it on fourth down and didn't get it. What was the fourth down? UCF was 3 for 6 on fourth down. So they got put in a third down or fourth down position 24 times. They went for it, or third down 18 times. They went for it 6 times on fourth down. That kind of shows you where this offense was going. They had to go for it 6 times on fourth down. It's just not good enough. And I don't want to put it all on the offensive line. I don't. But it kind of is. 10 penalties for 75 yards. One of them was a BS pass interference on the defense. So you kind of take that back. But these stupid penalties, and Carter Miller had his worst game today, like he did. And I don't want to, I know people are going to go off on Carter Miller and saying, yeah, but oh my God, that was so bad. He's been the best offensive lineman for the entire season. So listen, at the end of the day, I don't, yes, it was bad. It was a bad performance. But again, he's been the best offensive lineman to date. So he had a bad game. Then all the other guys had a bad game today too. They decided to not start guard Melamar and Keegan Smith. They started Cam Kinney, and Cam Kinney should not be playing football. He should be in case of emergency. In case of emergency. We had a huge play downfield that got us 35 yards. What happens? He holds. I think he was also the chop block. I'm telling you, the problem with this UCF football team is this offensive line is really bad. And you guys have known that, and I've said, well, give it time, they're making better. No, it's bad. It's bad. If this UCF offensive line was average, UCF is winning some of these games. Out of the last 3 weeks, UCF would have won at least one of them. The problem is, you can't run the football, so teams are playing back. Then when you try to pass the ball, they're playing in coverage. And then when you actually move the ball, the offensive line has too many mistakes. Too many. That's the problem. And that's where the frustration is coming from. Because right now, this team can't get out of its own way. They competed well. You look at the stats, UCF and Cincinnati were even. Really even. And it's not like UCF didn't move the ball. They did. The issue was, in the second half, they couldn't move the ball more than 5 yards at a time. What do you mean by that, Sean? Well, let's go to the drives. UCF opens the third quarter with a 6-play, 45-minute drive that ended on downs. They didn't get any points. Took 2 minutes and 52 seconds off the clock. Well, on Cincinnati's point, they opened the third quarter with their opening drive, 3 plays, 8 yards, and a punt. Okay, great. UCF gets the ball back. 17 plays, 40 yards. Took 9 minutes off the clock. 9 minutes off of the clock. 9 minutes and 2 seconds. 17 plays, 40 yards. They gained 40 yards in 9 minutes. Oh, Sean, in the fourth quarter, UCF's down 20-3. What are they going to do? I'm glad you asked. They got a touchdown on this drive in the fourth quarter. They got the ball with 9 minutes and 7 seconds left in the game. They're down by 17 points. They're down by 17 with 9 minutes and 7 seconds. They went on a 19-play, granted, 90-yard drive, and it took 7 minutes off of the clock. 7 minutes off of the clock to get the touchdown and then the 2-point conversion. Like, in the second half, they had the ball. Cincinnati had the ball in the second half for basically like 7 minutes. UCF dominated time possession in the second half. Oh, Sean, I wonder why. How did UCF? Because they couldn't score. Because it took them years and years to get down the field to just put up anything. And what was Cincinnati going to do? Cincinnati's like, sure, you can take the 5 yards here. We're up by 17 points. Why do we care? We are leading by 3 scores. Take all the time you need. UCF moved the ball. If you look, again, if you look at the first half, they moved the football. The issue, they had a fumble. And I'll be honest, the refs were awful. The refs were so bad. This is the worst. This was the epitome of bad refereeing was this game. They missed a PI call in the first half. They missed a targeting call. They called UCF for a pass interference where it clearly was not a pass interference, where they were when Cincy was in a 3rd and 16, DJ Bell played it very well, and they called him for pass interference. Awful refereeing. But at the end of the day, and I said this early in the game when the refs were being awful, I said at the end of the day, UCF has to play perfect. They have to play good, fundamental, sound football. And unfortunately today, they didn't. And unfortunately, this is now the second half of last week, and now this entire game. This is 6 quarters of football where you look at it and you say, yikes. The offense can't get out of its own way. It can't, because they can't run the football. Until UCF decides and learns that they can run the football effectively, this team is what this team is. And let me be very clear. I'm not saying that they won't win another game. I still believe that they'll be able to potentially get to a bowl game if they can figure this out. But in Power 4 football, if you cannot run the football effectively and pick up meaningful yards, and by meaningful yards, I mean 4 to 5 yards a carry. If you're only picking up 2 yards a carry, guess what that means? You're not going to pick up you probably won't pick up a first down at some point. And teams are not afraid of you running the football. Why did Scott Frost's offense make so much noise when he was here? Well, run pass option, right? They were so afraid of you running, but they were even more afraid of you passing it. So you're able to hand it off to your electric running backs, and they get chunk yardage. Right? Right now, you can't run a Scott Frost offense. Why? Because you can't run the ball. Oh, well, the receivers aren't getting open. No, they're not getting open because they've got 8 guys in coverage. Like, in the live watch along, we had a couple of people put that like, oh, the wide receivers aren't getting open. No, they can't because they've got 8 guys in coverage. And to the point of Cam in his play, yeah, like Cam isn't throwing to a spot. Cam is throwing and waiting for the guys to get to the spot and then throwing it at times. And then the times where Cam tried to throw it and lead them, it was not good. That's the issue right now. The issue is teams know they don't need to really defend the run against UCF. Because if you watch the games, you can't look at the stats. If you watch the games, it tells you everything you need to know. UCF is not a good running team. They will not run the football. Cam Fancher ran the football well, but that was plays breaking down and making something out of nothing, which, again, he's really good at. But boy, until this offensive line can figure out not to beat themselves, this offense will go nowhere. This defense has some hope. This defense is good. This defense will keep UCF in games. They call it like it is. This was still a game. They were down 20-3, and you're still like, dang it, if they could just get some offense going, they could be in this game. That's the crazy thing. They were down 17-3 at halftime, and you legitimately felt if UCF could just get some offense going, they'd be in this game. But they can never get it going. That is the underlying issue for this UCF team. The defense is good. Yes, are they going to give up some bad drives? Sure. but they keep you in games. The problem is this offensive line can't create a hole for a running back and beats them when they get into the red zone. Or not even the red zone, when they cross the 50-yard line. Until that gets fixed, this team is what this team is. And I don't want my frustration to push the fact that I've always said from the minute that the season started, this is a rebuilding year. Don't expect much. You're not expecting this team to win more than 6 games, if that. But, like I said, the frustration stems from I would much rather them get blown off the field than to lose games the way they lost today. Because it wasn't that they didn't deserve to be on the same field. They were 2 comparable teams. The problem, UCF made Cincinnati's defense look like they were amazing, when really they're not. UCF moved the ball and beat themselves. That's way more frustrating than getting blown out. I would rather it be the Kansas game from 2 years ago every single week than see UCF be in these games and just beat themselves over and over and over and over again. I'm sorry. Because then at least okay, UCF just isn't it. But they can be. And that's where even Scott Frost has mentioned it in the past couple of weeks. He says, we're right there. We just need to get over the hump. And it's yeah. And I don't blame Scott Frost. At the end of the day, the only thing I do blame on the coaching staff is you gotta coach them up. There can't be this many simple penalties from the offensive line. It can't happen. You are costing yourself momentum in games because of it. You're costing yourself and your team potential wins. You were in this game, but you couldn't get out of your own way. That's the frustrating thing. But also on top of that, yes, you can't run the football. And again, defensively, good job. You held Cincinnati. You did great. You did great today. Can't fault you. Were they perfect? No. They were a little leaky at times. But boy, it's so hard. You can't go off on the defense when the offense is this inept. You can't. I hope Taven is healthy next week. I know Cam started. I wasn't upset with Cam starting today. Taven's banged up. And it's not that Cam did a bad job. You just need, with the way that this offense is constructed, you need a pure passer because we can't run the football. You need a quarterback that is the most accurate passer on your roster. I think Taven's the most accurate. And not that Cam didn't have good throws. Cam had some really good throws on some of these crossing routes and stuff like that, but he's not as good as Taven at throwing the football. Now, Cam does bring that extra element of the running ability, right? But man, I don't know, guys. It was a tough watch today. It was a tough watch. Luckily, I think next week is a winnable game against West Virginia. You need to win it. Next week is the closest thing to a must-win. It's a must-win. You have to beat West Virginia. I don't see them winning any of the other road games on their schedule. This is where I said it'd be nice if you picked up one of these wins these past 3 weeks, because that kind of gives you a cushion in case you have a slip-up against one of these home opponents. But man, if you do not beat West Virginia next week, you might as well say there's no bowl game. The best you could do is probably 5 wins. And I saw somebody saying, we talked about in the live stream about how in college football there's no more rebuilding and the season doesn't matter, or whatever. It does matter. Getting to a bowl game would be immense for this coaching staff and for this team. It builds momentum. If you can get to a bowl game, it doesn't matter. It builds you momentum. We're saying that now. Last year was 4-8. We had no bowl game, and it gets people fired. At the end of the day, a bowl game for this team would be immense. But you are no chance of getting to a bowl game if you play like that on offense. 0. Defense needs to keep up, though. If the defense lets up at all, they have no shot. The defense is in a much better spot than the offense. The offense has a lot to work on. A lot to work on. All right. I don't know. Is there anything else I need to talk about? That was my rant. Let's see. I don't think so. A lot of different guys caught the ball. I guess that's good. Again, I think I think the defense, like Brendan Sorsby, had his worst game today. He wasn't that good. He was basically who I thought he's been. Like, he genuinely had his worst game today. Yeah. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. That's that. And again, I do think this team can get better. I'm not going to front and say that they can't win any more games. Like I said, I know a lot of people are probably all doom and gloom, 3 straight losses, can't win in October. Next week is your opportunity. And if I'm Scott Frost, I'm preaching. Go out, win this game, then we get a bye week and we can finish the season strong. You need to win next week. You need to win next week. Nobody expected to win this game. And that's I don't want people thinking like, Sean, you even said you don't think UCF was going to win this game. You're right. I didn't. It's the way they lost. Just like last week. It's the way you lose these games that do matter. Like, you had an opportunity to win this game if your offense was just like last week. But it wasn't. So, that's going to do it for this week's post-game pod of Charge On. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, do all that you do. As always, we are sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sports. Like I said, guys, if you want to bet on UCF this college football season, and you have been, I hope you've been using FanDuel. The Magic are coming back too. That's going to be something you want to use for FanDuel when it comes to basketball season, NBA, college basketball, NFL. FanDuel is the place to do it. Go download it today. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, proud sponsor of the Charge On podcast. Guys, we'll be back this week. Obviously, pregame podcast on Thursday for UCF versus West Virginia. We'll get you ready for that. And then, as always, on next Saturday, we'll have our pregame show and postgame show. UCF falls to 3-3, and they lose at Nippert Stadium to Cincinnati, 20-11. Guys, it's been Charge On, presented by FanDuel. We will see you next week.